I never tried to keep my accomplishments under wraps. Standing outside my aunt's split-level home in the outskirts of Denver on a crisp Christmas Eve in 2020, I glanced down at the frost gathering on my suede boots and wondered how things might have played out if my family had just believed in me. Once did my name's Rachel Benton, and I'm the founder and CEO of NovaPoint Consulting, one of the fastest-growing firms in sustainable energy across the Mountain West. But to my family, I'm still the impulsive one who ditched a cushy analyst gig at Mercer and Kelman 6 years back to chase some pipe dream. The twinkle lights blinked lazily while my brain replayed last year's holiday dinner. "So, are you still doing that freelance thing?" my cousin Lindsay asked, twirling her Cabernet like she'd read about it in Wine Enthusiast. Her MBA from Northwestern practically walked into the room before she did. "Your mom said you might need something steady." "My friend's looking for admin help at Conoco," Mom chimed in, thinking she was being supportive. She didn't know Conoco had just wired my firm over $3.5 million to lead the overhaul of their Southwest solar infrastructure. My uncle, Greg Benton, spent over 2 decades climbing the ladder at Benton Petrotech, the company his father founded. He made it all the way to VP. Meanwhile, my dad, Greg's younger brother, bounced from gig to gig. That quiet tension between them? It shaped every family get-together. "Success comes with loyalty," Uncle Greg liked to say, usually with a pointed look at Lindsay and her picture-perfect resume, business degree, job in fossil fuels, schmoozing like it's a sport. That path wasn't for me. I double-majored in environmental policy and econ, then spent 4 years grinding at Mercer and Kelman. While most people were busy climbing the corporate ladder, I was laying the foundation for something real. My first client was a tiny wind startup in a town called Marlow. In just 5 months, they doubled their energy output. When I quit my job, Mom cried and told me I was throwing away my future. What she didn't see was that I was stepping into it. I built NovaPoint in silence, smart, calculated steps. My name wasn't the one people saw at first, but the results spoke loudly. Tonight, though, they were finally going to learn who was behind the deal they'd been bragging about all year. To them, I was still Rachel, the idealist who rented a hot desk downtown. What they didn't know, that hot desk was a decoy. My real office spans the top 3 floors of Denver's most exclusive tower, with glass walls overlooking Sloan Lake. But since no one in my family ever bothered to visit, the myth held strong. I inhaled, then hit the doorbell. My aunt answered with a warm smile that quickly morphed into her usual worried expression. "Rach, honey, we weren't sure you'd show." She hugged me tight, then whispered, "Greg's here, and he brought a couple investors. Maybe don't bring up your little company tonight." Inside, the place was glowing with Christmas cheer, twinkle lights, laughter, and a spread clearly catered. Oil execs mingled with the cousins, and of course Lindsay held court by the fire, showing off her engagement ring to anyone with working eyesight. Her fiancé, Aaron, now a junior VP at Benton Petrotech, stood beside her, soaking in compliments like it was his job. "Rachel," my uncle shouted from the bar, already halfway through a Manhattan. "Come meet Glenn Morgan from Apex Core. They've got a data entry opening." I almost choked. Apex Core was one of my clients. My team was currently finalizing their $125 million transition into clean energy. But to them, I was just another Benton who never quite lived up to the name. Before I could answer, Uncle Greg came barreling over, charming and loud, flanked by 2 guys in power suits. "This merger with Zenith Grid's giving me gray hairs," he said with a theatrical sigh. My posture stiffened. Zenith Grid was mine, a shell corporation I created specifically to lure Benton Petrotech into overextending their assets. "You know," Uncle Greg added, scratching his chin, "if we could just land a meeting with NovaPoint Consulting. This merger might actually get somewhere." "Too bad their CEO doesn't take meetings," one of the board guys muttered. I took a sip of cider to cover the smirk crawling across my face. They had no idea she was already in the room. "Not yet," Greg muttered. "But they'll come around. We're Benton Petrotech, after all." I couldn't help it. Maybe the name Benton doesn't carry much weight anymore, I said coolly. Silence dropped over the room like a curtain. My uncle's glass froze midair. My mom's eyes went wide, and my dad's jaw flexed like he was holding back a scream. Rachel, he barked, but I didn't back down. Word is, Benton Petroteca's market share is shrinking. That merger with Zenith Grid. I looked him dead in the eye. It's not some gutsy power move. It's survival. It hit them like a slap to the face. Years of being talked over, brushed aside at every family dinner, that pressure finally cracked open. Uncle Greg turned a blotchy shade of red. How dare you, he sputtered. What the hell could you know about our business? Dad yanked me toward the kitchen by the elbow. Once we were inside, his voice dropped to a sharp whisper. Have you lost your damn mind? You humiliated me in front of Greg and his board. You've always been reckless, he snapped, cutting me off. With your little, consulting, side project. Acting like you know what real business looks like. The kitchen door creaked. Lindsay was leaning against the frame with Aaron lurking behind her, smug as ever. Maybe it's time she left, Lindsay said, tone soaked in fake sweetness. Uncle Greg doesn't need more stress right now. The merger is what matters. Dad didn't even blink. She's right. You should go. We don't need some glorified freelancer stirring up drama. I looked at them, my dad's cold stare, Lindsay's little smirk. And my mom? Silent. Like always. 5 years of hiding what I'd built. Also, I could keep peace with a family that never saw me. Fine, I said quietly, reaching for my coat. But don't forget this moment. Because tomorrow, you're going to remember it very differently. Aaron scoffed. What are you going to do? I smiled, already picturing the documents sitting on my desk. Signed, sealed, and bearing the name TL Phoenix, CEO of NovaPoint Consulting. Merry Christmas, I said as I stepped out into the moonlit cold. At dawn the next morning, I walked into NovaPoint's headquarters before the city had even blinked awake. Denver was quiet, still wrapped in the hush of the holiday, but inside our offices, the hum of preparation was already in motion. Good morning, Ms. Phoenix, said Emma, handing me a hot espresso with her usual perfect timing. Only 3 people on this planet knew that Rachel Benton and TL Phoenix were the same person, and that secret? It was about to go up in flames. If you've ever had your worth dismissed by the people who should have known better, stick around. The next part of this story is proof that quiet wins hit the loudest when they finally speak. The Benton delegation is scheduled for 10, Emma said as she walked back in, tablet in hand. Your uncle's called 4 times trying to move it up. I grinned and settled into my chair. The entire 38th floor was built to radiate power. Glass walls framing the Denver skyline, reclaimed with sculptures dotting the space, soft lights, and at the heart of it all, my desk. Custom-made from century-old longleaf pine. A quiet flex with roots. This was my world now. Not their overcooked roasts. Not their dining room interrogations. How many are coming? I asked as I flipped through the Zenith merger docs. 8. Emma replied. Greg Benton, for board members, their acting CEO. She paused. Your dad, Lindsay, and her fiancé. Of course. Lindsay had just snagged a shiny new title, head of strategic growth. Another hollow promotion handed out for family loyalty, not talent. I took a breath and let it settle. Dad's words from last night still echoed somewhere in the back of my mind. Emma saw it. She gave a small, knowing nod. Call Greg at Zenith Grid, I said calmly. Let him know we're green light. Greg knew the play. He ran my shell company, and he was about to deliver one hell of a performance. At 9:45 sharp, Emma's voice came through the intercom. They showed up, early figures. I didn't flinch. Make them wait 15, I told Emma. I needed that quiet moment to reset. No more pretending. No more playing small. At exactly 10 a.m., I saw their silhouettes through the frosted glass walls, my uncle pacing, my dad stiff as stone, Lindsay whispering something to Aaron. I adjusted my blazer, gave my lipstick a quick fix, and opened the door. The room went dead silent. Uncle Greg stood abruptly. Excuse me? Where's TL Phoenix? We're here to speak with NovaPoint's CEO. I walked right to the head of the table. Calm, unshaken. You're looking at her, I said. TL Phoenix. Rachel Benton, CEO of NovaPoint Consulting. Faces drained of color. My dad actually blinked like he couldn't process it. She's making this up, Lindsay snapped. Sit, I said, my voice cold as steel, and she did. Emma, I called. Pass out the merger binders. As the folders dropped one by one onto the conference table, I watched their composure start to crumble. Inside was everything, years of analysis on Benton Petrotech's declining financial health, every crack in their infrastructure, and a full outline of the deal I was offering. And they were cornered. NovaPoint has been reviewing your position for quite some time, I began evenly. What you're calling a strategic merger. It's a rescue mission. And the numbers prove it. Emma tapped the remote. The room lit up with projections, data visuals, and side-by-side comparisons. Every damning metric highlighted in crisp detail. Your cash reserves are nearly depleted, I continued. Modernization stalled out. And in the last 3 years, your market share has dropped by 42%. I turned to face them, steady and direct. If you don't move forward with this merger, your company won't survive another 6 months. Greg's face flashed a deep, angry maroon. This is outrageous, he barked. These numbers, this is private information. I didn't blink. Nothing's private from me. I let the next truth drop like a bomb. NovaPoint has been tracking Benton Petrotech for years. We've acquired substantial portions of your debt under shell corporations. You never noticed because you were never looking. I met my dad's eyes and Zenith Grid? That company you've been negotiating with? It's mine. I created it as a front to draw you in. They sat there, speechless. My father's lips parted, but no words came out. Lindsay gripped the table. Aaron looked like he wanted to vanish. I had waited a long time for this moment, not to humiliate them, but to finally be seen. Aaron let out a shaky laugh. No way. That can't be true. Zenith Grid's international. It is, I replied smoothly. And it's mine. I built the whole thing for this exact moment. I watched the fear ripple across their faces. Every delay, every clause in those contracts. You weren't just negotiating. You were playing against me. My dad finally found his voice. Why would you do something like this? I met his eyes without flinching, because no one sitting at this table ever thought I was worthy of being here. You tossed me out last night for speaking the truth. Now you're going to hear every word. I pressed the remote again. The graphs vanished, replaced by a breakdown of what came next. This merger's happening, but it'll happen on my terms. First order of business. The board steps down. All of you. Uncle Greg slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. Then let Benton Petrotech go under, I said coolly. The choice is yours. The room broke into chaos. Greg yelling about lawsuits. Lindsay crying. Board members arguing in panicked whispers. My dad stared at me like he'd never seen me before in his life. Eventually, the shouting died down. What exactly are your terms? Greg asked, his voice low. Complete restructuring, I said. New leadership. And we cut the nepotism. He glanced at Lindsay. And her? And Aaron. Out. I said simply. All future roles filled based on actual qualifications. You can't do this, Lindsay choked out. Dad, stop her. But he didn't. He wouldn't. Deep down, he knew he couldn't. One by one, they signed the papers. My dad stayed in his chair long after the ink dried, regret written all over his face. Rachel, he said quietly, starting to stand. You should go, I replied. Emma will walk you out. He hesitated. I misjudged you. Yeah, I said. You did. I looked him in the eyes. Merry Christmas. They left and I stayed, watching the lights of Halston flicker against the dusk. Emma appeared with a glass of champagne. Congratulations, she said. Though I doubt this is the end. She was right. This wasn't the victory lap. This was the start line. They finally knew my name, but they still had no idea what I was building. Tomorrow would bring headlines, lawsuits, and firestorms. Tonight, I allowed myself one breath. The woman they laughed out of dinner now controlled their company. Revenge didn't need to scream. It only needed to be accurate. I raised my glass to the darkened skyline. Merry Christmas. The weeks that followed moved fast. The truth about TL Phoenix unraveled across every financial feed. Legacy undone. Heir turned hunter. Headlines couldn't get enough. I scrolled through one more. Rachel Carr, the strategist who dismantled her inheritance to build her empire. My phone buzzed. Another message from Lindsay. The 10th this week. I deleted it. Emma entered. The transition team's ready for final sign-off. I nodded. The last month had gutted my family. Greg tried to sue. Our legal team buried him in documentation. My father stepped down. Couldn't stomach reporting to his daughter. Lindsay and Zach? Loudest voices online. Tried to spin it as sabotage. But the media had the receipts, and receipts don't lie. Let me know if you want this adapted into a screenplay scene, a short story format, or a pitch doc. Emma reappeared, voice low. Your mother's downstairs. She wants to see you. I froze. She hadn't called, texted nothing since the takeover. Not once. Send her up. A few minutes later, she stepped in. She looked completely out of place, surrounded by glass, steel, and quiet authority. Her eyes swept across the room, clearly overwhelmed. Rachel, she murmured, twisting her hands nervously. This is quite the office. What do you want, Mom? She eased into one of the guest chairs, suddenly looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Your dad's not doing well, she said softly. The stress, everything that's happened, it's catching up. And Lindsay's engagement? Over. Aaron left after he lost his position. The family's falling apart. I kept my voice even. That's unfortunate. But business doesn't run on sympathy. Benton Petrotech is stabilizing fast. She shook her head. I'm not here about the company. I'm here because I want to understand. You worked so hard. We thought you were struggling, but you were building all of this. Why didn't you tell us? I let out a short, dry laugh. Tell you? When I made my first million, you were busy throwing Lindsay a party for getting a department lead role. When I bought my first firm, you told me to apply for an admin position. We were trying to help. No. You were trying to shove me into your version of safe. Of small. Her eyes filled with tears. We were wrong. I nodded. But you never looked. You chose not to see me. Can't we fix it? Benton Petrotech will be fixed, I said coolly. But this family? That's not my project. I turned back to my desk. Emma will walk you out. As I lifted my pen to sign the final document, a memory stirred my grandmother's voice, quiet but steady. Success isn't about proving others wrong, Rachel. It's about proving yourself right. And I signed. 6 months later, under new leadership, Benton Petrotech's valuation had more than doubled. Messages started pouring in, some full of anger, others dripping with sudden warmth. I answered none of them, until one caught my eye. Sophie Benton, Uncle Greg's youngest. The only one who never joined the chorus of condescension. I don't want anything, the message read. Just wanted to say you inspired me. Watching you take control gave me the courage to try. I'm starting something of my own. For the first time in months, I smiled at a family message. Anna, I said, pressing the intercom. Schedule lunch with Sophie Benton. And get me a rundown on her startup. Emma raised an eyebrow. Family? I shook my head. No. Potential. That's the legacy I care about now.